Hello, children. Today we are going to start our last lesson in history. The name of the lesson is India After Independence. When India became independent in August 1947, it had to face a lot of great challenges. The two major challenges were number one, the partition of Pakistan from India had brought 8 million refugees. All these refugees had to be given homes and also jobs. Number two, there were 500 princely states which were ruled by Maharaja or Nawab, each of whom had to be persuaded to join the new nation. Because if these rulers refused to join in the new nation, then moving from one state to another may require us to produce passport and visa. So, in the long run, the new nation India had to adopt a political system that would serve the hopes and expectations of its entire population. India's population in 1947 was large, almost 345 million. It was divided between high caste and low caste, between majority of Hindu community and Indians who practiced other religions. The citizens of this land spoke many different languages, wore many different dresses, ate different kinds of foods, and practiced different kinds of profession. India did not have the problem of unifying the states alone. It also faced the problem of development. At independence, the vast majority of Indians lived in the villages. Farmers and peasants depended on the monsoon for their survival, and so did the non farming sector, such as the barbers, carpenters, weavers, and other people who gave services to the farmers. Because if the farmers did not get rain, and if the crops failed, all these people who were providing services to the farmers and peasants will not get paid for their services. In the cities, factory workers lived in crowded slums with little access to education or health care. Clearly, the new nation had to lift its people out of poverty by increasing the productivity of agriculture and also by promoting new job opportunities by establishing industries. Unity and development had to be improved side by side, because if they are not improved, then there will be always conflicts and fights between high caste with the low caste, Hindus with Muslims, and so on and so forth. Moreover, if the country did not develop economically, then there would be lot of divisions and conflicts between the rich and the poor, between cities and the countryside, between different regions of India that were prosperous and regions that lagged behind. So, a written constitution, a set of law, was required to govern the people of India. Between December 1946 and November 1949, some 300 Indians had a series of meetings on the country's political future. These 300 people membership was called as Constituent Assembly, and this meeting was held in New Delhi. The participants in this meeting came from all over India and from different political parties. Finally, the Indian Constitution came into effect on 26 January 1950, which is why we celebrate the Republic of our country. That means we are governed by our set of rules which are agreed both by the government and the citizens of our country. One feature of the constitution was the adoption of universal adult franchise, which meant that all Indians above the age of 21 would be allowed to vote in state and national elections. This was a big step because Indians had never been allowed to choose their own leaders in the past. In other countries, such as the United Kingdom and the United States, the right had been granted in different stages. First, only men of property had the right to vote. Then, men who were educated were also added on. Following, the working class men got the chance to right to vote. Finally, after a bitter struggle, American and British women were granted the right to vote. On the other hand, in India, soon after independence, India chose to grant this right to all its citizens, regardless of gender, class, or education. The second feature of the constitution was that it guaranteed equality before the law to all citizens, regardless of what caste they belonged to or what religion they belonged to. There were some Indians who wished that the political system of the new nation India should be based on the Hindu ideals, just as how Pakistan was formed to protect the interests of Muslim people. But the Indian Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru was of the opinion that India could not and must not become another Hindu Pakistan. Besides Muslims, India also had a large population of Sikhs, Christians, as well as Parsis and Jains. Under the new constitution, they would have the same right as the Hindus, the same opportunities when it came to seeking jobs in government or the private sector. Therefore, the law was made equal for all. The third feature of the Indian Constitution was that it offered special privileges, special chances for the poorest and most disadvantaged Indians. The practice of untouchability, described as a slur and a blot on the fair name of India, was abolished. Earlier, Hindu temples were open only to the higher caste people. But now, after this provision was included in the constitution, lower caste people also got a chance to enter into Hindu temples. Not only this, after a long debate, the Constituent Assembly also proposed that a certain percentage of seats in lawmaking body of government as well as jobs in government offices should be reserved for members of the lower caste. It had been argued by some that untouchable did not have good grades to get into the prestigious Indian administration service, but Khandekar, the member of the Constituent Assembly, argued that it was because of the upper caste that the lower caste were being unfit today. So, it is not fit to deprive the lower caste of certain privileges which should be guaranteed to them. Along with the former untouchables, the Adivasis or scheduled tribes were also granted reservation of seats and jobs. Like the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe members had also been discriminated against. The tribals had been deprived of modern healthcare and education, while their lands and forests had been taken away by more powerful outsiders. The new privileges granted them by the Constitution were meant to make amends for this. The Constituent Assembly also spent many days discussing the powers of the central government versus those of the state government. Some members felt that the center should be given more power, whereas some felt that the state should be given greater autonomy and freedom, because certain people felt that it was impossible for a democratic country to work in the same sense and spirit for the rest of the country from Delhi. So the Constituent Assembly decided to balance all these competing claims, providing three lists of subjects. First, the Union list, which included taxes, defense, and foreign affairs, and these responsibilities would be exclusively the responsibility of the central government. Second was the state list, which included education and health, and under this the states were given more power to bring out changes and development in education and health. The third was the concurrent list, under which the subjects such as forests and agriculture were taken into consideration, and for this both the center and the state would have joint responsibility. Another major problem in the Constituent Assembly was concerned with language. Many members believed that English language should leave India with the British rulers, and in its place they argued that Hindi should be taken as the official language of the country. However, those who did not speak Hindi were of a different opinion. Speaking in the assembly, T.T. Krishnamachari conveyed a warning on behalf of the people of the South, some of whom threatened to separate from India if Hindi was imposed on them. So a compromise was finally arrived, stating that while Hindi would be the official language of India, English would be used in the courts, the services, and communication between one state to another. Many Indians contributed to the framing of the constitution of our country. But the most important role was played by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who was the chairman of the drafting committee. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar is now considered as the father of the Indian Constitution. Dr. Ambedkar pointed out that political democracy had to be followed by economic and social democracy also. Giving the right to vote would not automatically lead to the removal of other inequalities, such as between the rich and poor or between the upper and the lower caste. So it was very much important to remove the inequality in the economic and social affairs of the country as well. In the 1920s, Indian National Congress, the main party of the freedom struggle, had promised that once the country won independence, each major language group would have its own province. That is, it would have its own state. However, after independence, the Congress did not take any steps to honor this promise, for India had been divided on the basis of religion despite the wishes and efforts of Mahatma Gandhi. Freedom had come not to one nation but to two nations. As a result of the partition of India, more than 1 million people had been killed in riots between Hindus and Muslims. Both Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru and Deputy Prime Minister Vallabhbhai Patel were against the creation of language-based states. So, both Prime Minister Nehru and Deputy Prime Minister Vallabhbhai Patel stressed on the nation to be strong and united. But the Kannada speakers, the Malayalam speakers, the Marathi speakers had all looked forward to having their own state. The strongest protest came from the Telugu speaking districts of the Madras Presidency. When Nehru went to campaign there during the general elections of 1952, he was welcomed with black flags and slogans demanding, "We want Andhra." In the month of October, a Gandhian named Potti Sriramalu went on a hunger strike demanding the formation of Andhra state to protect the interests of Telugu speakers. As this fast went on, it attracted much support, Hadtal, Bandh and strikes from many of the towns in that area. On 15 December 1952, after 58 days into his fast, Potti Sriramalu died. The news in the passing away of Sriramalu engulfed entire Andhra in chaos. The protest was so widespread and so strong that the central government was forced to create a new state named Andhra. Thus, on October 1953, the new state of Andhra came into being. After the creation of Andhra, other language communities also demanded their own separate states. A states recognition committee was set up which submitted the report in 1956 recommending the redrawing of district and provincial boundaries to form compact provinces of Assamese, Bengali, Oriya, Tamil, Malayalam, Kannada and Telugu speakers respectively. The large Hindu-speaking regions of North India was also to be broken up into several states. A little later, in 1960, the bilingual, that is, two-language state of Bombay was divided into separate states for Marathi and Gujarati speakers. In 1966, the state of Punjab was also divided into Punjab and Haryana. The state Punjab was for the Punjabi speakers who were mostly Sikhs, and the later, that is the Haryana, was for the rest of the people who spoke not Punjabi but different versions of Haryanavi or Hindi. Bringing India and Indians out of poverty and building a modern technical and industrial base were among the major objectives of the new nation. So in 1950, the government set up a planning commission to help design and bring out suitable policies for the economic development of the country. After much of an agreement, there was the mixed economy model brought into our country, where both the state and the private sector would play important and complementary roles in increasing production and generating jobs for the people. In the first 5 year plan from 1951 to 55, the stress was on the improvement of agriculture and the techniques of agriculture. In 1956, the second 5 year plan was formulated. The focus strongly was on the development of heavy industries such as steel and on the building of large dams. These sectors would be under the control of the state. Although the second 5 year policy got a lot of support, but there were some who felt that it had been better if emphasis was more on agriculture, whereas there were others who felt that primary education was getting neglected. Still others believed that the environmental implications of economic policies had not been taken into consideration. As Mahatma Gandhi's follower Meera Ben wrote in 1949 that although science and machinery may give huge returns for the time, but ultimately in the end it is going to bring a lot of destruction and desolation. So, we need to develop our lives within the laws of the nature. Children, on 15th August 2007, India celebrated 60 years of its existence as a free nation, and that India is still united and still democratic is a huge achievement which we must be proud of. Many foreign observers had felt that India cannot survive as a single country and that it would break up into many parts with each region or a language group seeking to form a nation on its own. Others believed that it would come under a military rule very soon. However, as many as 13 general elections have been held since independence, as well as hundreds of state and local elections. There is a free press as well as an independent judiciary. Finally, we can say that the fact that people here speak different languages and practice different religions has not come in the way of national unity. Although our constitution has guaranteed the untouchables and the Dalits equal rights, but still we can see that in many parts of rural India they are not allowed to have an access to water sources. They cannot enter into temples, parks and other public places. Despite the secular ideals of the Indian constitution, there have been clashes between different religious groups in many states. Above all, many observers have also found that there is a big gap between the rich and the poor, which has grown over the years. Some parts of India and some groups of Indians have benefited a great deal from the economic development of the country. They live in large houses, dine in expensive restaurants, send their children to expensive private schools, and take expensive foreign holidays. At the same time, many others continue to live below the poverty line, housed in urban slums or living in remote villages or lands that yield very little, which is why they cannot afford to send their children to school. The Republic of India has not been a great success, but it has not been a failure either. Children, with that I conclude the lesson.